Quite a few times the title's a hero.
Are we ready, sir?
Yes, we are. Thank you.
Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Let's start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We do have a quorum at this point. Some of the other board members couldn't make it. We may have Mrs. Stevenson join later on. She'll just simply move into her chair. Can I have a motion to adopt an agenda? Mrs. Hoffman, second Mr. Gilbert. All in favor? Okay. We're going to be doing a study session, which is designed for the purpose of having administrative updates to the board. There are no public comments at these meetings. Residents may attend the next scheduled business meeting on May 7th or contact the board via email at boe@shenandoah.org with any comments or questions. All questions come to the Office of Public Information Officer and are shared with the board and our superintendent as appropriate. Policy questions, concerns are typically addressed by the board president. Operational questions, concerns typically addressed by the superintendent and or designee. So at this point, I'll turn over to Dr. Robinson for superintendent comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Presley. I guess one of the things I want to remind people that next week is start of spring break, but it feels like it's start of fall outside right now. But tonight we're privileged to have two different groups of our performing arts students here, and I look out and I'm thinking, wow, I think they must have brought all the members of all the groups, which is a good thing. So I'm not sure who's representing music. I see Mr. Snell. Where's our music? So we'll start first with music.
Mr. Moon?
Come on up, Mr. Moon.
Yes.
So as they come forward, one of the things for people who might be first time here in attendance, throughout the course of the year, the Board of Education makes it a point to try to recognize different groups. The last board meeting, we had various sports groups. Tonight we have various groups from the performing arts. And this is a way recognizing that while board members try to attend many activities, and in fact attend many activities, sometimes they're unable to attend many activities, and sometimes they're unable to attend some of the respective awards banquets that some of our groups have. And so this is one way for the board to express appreciation by having groups come and tell us about their season, their performances, and some highlights, and share with us, and also share with the public that's watching via live stream as well. So thank you very much.
So my name is Corey Moon. I am the assistant, or was the assistant director for the Shen High School Musical Company this year. We did The Little Mermaid. We had 4 really successful performances back in the beginning of March. We have a couple of people here. We have the president of the company, Chris Amodio, to share a few things. We started everything way back in November, and it's crazy to see that we did the entire process, put an entire show together, and gave these performances, and that it's already been over a month since it's done it. So I'm just going to let Chris and a couple of the other cast members and crew members and musician members just share a little bit about their experience and some of the highlights that they had during the experience.
So hi, I'm Chris. So one big part of just like the musical and everything is just the rehearsals, because a lot of people only see the show and the performances, but there's a lot that go into it, such as the rehearsals. So we do a lot of dancing, singing, everything, acting, and I think it's just a great place to kind of let our creativity like flow, as well as just work work so hard, and
I was one of the hair and makeup managers, and I was also able to be in the pit orchestra for The Little Mermaid, and it was a great experience on both fronts. I was able to let my creativity out and work on with the hair and makeup to make people look like fish and stuff in a humanistic form. And also the music was able to challenge me in a way that I'm not able to get in the music classroom. So that was great. And another thing that was really important was every Saturday we would have set building, and it was a great experience to be able to build the set for the show, and it was something that everybody had to do. So we were all able to put our efforts into one thing, even though we had different sections of cast and crew and pit.
And we saw your great work with, was it Ursula, the character,
Yes.
the villain? It was really well done. The entire performance, everyone's part. I had a lot of fun seeing the Little Mermaid, but I definitely walked away thinking, wow, we have some real talent here. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Lauren. I played Ursula in this production, and I previously have been involved in a couple of the other shows. So I did the play, and I did the two, not Footloose, but Phantom and Brigadoon. And something that I think we all stand for, like as a senior, there is such a sense of community that you don't find anywhere else. Like, sure, you can be part of a sports team, and you all are there for a common goal. But the thing about a show is you have all this energy and all this love and passion that all comes and it's over in, was it 3 days, you know? And so unfortunately that is the best and the worst part of it. And I think something that makes this really unique is we all know each other so well. We know each other's schedules. We know exactly what each other is going through. Like when you see someone else in the hall, you're like, tech week, right? So it's crazy. And I feel like this year especially, I found so many new friendships and so many new passions for myself, because I do a lot of theater outside, but so I was involved in the cast. We did set construction. I actually did my own makeup for the show. So it's actually fun to play around, and I had friends in lights and sound, and we all got to experience all of those things and see parts that are not necessarily just being on stage, which is important. So, yeah.
You have to say something if you're here. Hey.
Hi, I'm Coral. I did stage crew for The Little Mermaid, and it was my first show that I've done. And honestly, it's something that you don't really think about, but stage crew really helps pull the show together, and being able to work with the cast and the other crews, it really helped me learn teamwork, and I made a lot of great friends from it, and it's just overall it was a really good experience.
There's not just one or 5 or 6 crew members. There were 62 we had this year. So it's crazy. It's way more that there's so much going on backstage you never see. So one of 62 or 63 we had.
How big is the entire company then?
We had 151 members this year.
How?
Okay, so my name is Amanda. I was also part of the stage crew, and I think it's a lot of fun to learn about what goes on backstage. From audience viewpoint, we always see the final product, but there's so much going on backstage, and we just all have to work hard to put up a great production. And I'm just really proud for this year's production, especially because it was my first musical, and I made so many great friends from the show, and also I got to learn different parts behind the scenes, which was a lot of fun. So.
Hi, I'm Morgan. I was an assistant stage manager, and I've been doing behind the stage things for almost all my life, and it was really cool putting my experience into power, and I'm really excited to be a stage manager in my future years in high school, and it was really nice to start working with people in a more advanced show. And it was a really great bonding experience, and I made a lot of new friends, and I think that stage crew is a very crucial part of the show.
It is.
I just want to say that when it was announced that usually around October, November, that it was going to be a Disney animation, I think a lot of people were sort of taken aback, because historically the types of productions have been open, the classic and adult type musicals, and people were sort of scratching their head, and they really thought, how are you guys going to pull it off? And you guys clearly hit it out of the park. You had 4 outstanding performances, and so many kids were involved. This isn't a program that's, a half dozen, 10 or 20. No, this is 150 kids touching it, experiencing it, and getting to know it. One other thing is I think you have an event coming up on May 4th, Cabaret. It might be an opportunity to mention that. That is something that the musical group does as a fundraiser. And it's a way where students can either individually or as a smaller group actually present a musical number. And it's done very well. It's a night well spent. High School East on Saturday. Yeah.
Sure. I'm currently part of the cabaret, and I was part of it for 2 years. And it's very different from the musical or most other musical experiences because you're working on a solo or a duet, and you're working to make your own song as best as it can be and honing your talent. And everybody that's there is helping each other. Like today I was helping another student choreograph his song to make it more lively, because that's another part. While it's not dance focused, it's also a way to learn how to bring out stage presence in a way that you can't get out of a musical because you're not sharing the stage with other people. So it's just about making yourself better.
Very good.
Great.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll go from one great group to another great group, and a little bit larger, but certainly want to invite Mr. Snell and his crew to come forward. No. Select the spokesperson. We'll be here till tomorrow.
Julia, Ruby, and Nicole. Good. Right there. All right, you guys can line up over here.
Yeah, some can come to this side too.
Some of you can come over here.
Wow,
I brought them all this year, Dr.
it's
Robinson.
impressive.
Some of you guys can come over here. Go over there, Hannah.
Impressive.
You can see their faces, that's the nice
Mr. Stevenson.
Let that young lady in there. So my name is Scott Snell, and I'm the director of the Shenandoah Colorguard program. I've just completed my 23rd year as director here at Shen, my 25th as being involved in the program. So what you see in front of you is students from all 4 of our competitive groups. We have approximately 60 students involved in 4 levels of competition, ranging from our beginner level up to our advanced level. We currently service students 5th through 12th grade in our competitive program, and then we also have a 4th grade intramural introductory program that we run, as well as our special needs program. So we, in the long run, end up with 6 programs altogether. So what you see in front of you is all the students who participated in the competitive aspect this year. Our teams competed not only nationally, but regionally and at the state level, and we came home this year with 3 gold medals from 3 of the 4 teams placed first in their division at states, and the other team placed 4th, barely missing that 3rd spot. We have a regional champion, and then our varsity team this year ended up 11th in the country at the World Championships. So they worked very hard, and I'm going to let 3 of our seniors just briefly talk a little bit about their experience, and hopefully they can give you a little bit of a better picture. As you can see, we did shows ranging from frogs and butterflies to circus themes, and then we had some villains over there, some prisoners that got in trouble throughout the course of the year. So many different themes.
My name's Ruby. As he said, I'm a senior, so I've been here since 6th grade. It's my 7th year in the program. I've done all sorts of shows, and it's been really, really awesome to see where I've been able to go with it and how many things I've been able to achieve. It's one of those things where you start and you're like, oh, this sucks, like this is really hard, and then you get to the end of it and it's like, wow, you've accomplished all these incredible things. Not only the medals, but the friendships that you make and the hard work, the etiquette that you get from all of that. It's also really awesome to see everyone around you doing what you love and doing it together. And it's kind of similar to theater, actually. The energy that you feel is very similar. You know, when you're doing a show, you can cheer everyone else on. It's kind of a performance that you don't really forget. So, yeah.
Hi, I'm Nicole. I'm also a senior, and I was a member of the JV team this year. And I've been a member of the Color Guard for 4 years, and not only I've learned a lot of things from it, ranging from perseverance to confidence in my own self, and that's really what Color Guard is all about, like feeling proud and confident in yourself and with the people around you. And I think that Shen is a really special place for Guard, and has allowed me to grow as a person and go on to compete in other color guards. So, yeah.
I'm Julia. This is my 5th year in Color Guard. I started in 8th grade. When I first joined Color Guard, like, I didn't realize how many experiences and like memories and friendships that I was going to gain from this, and how much like they were going to continue to impact my life now that I'm a senior and like going off to college next year, because I know that most of the people that I spun with throughout these 5 years, like, I'm probably going to have a lifelong friendship with. And just so many of the other things that I was able to learn about myself, and be able to grow as a person from being a part of this program is just like absolutely amazing, and something that I'm always going to be thankful for.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I went to the show that was in Troy, and
Yeah.
I was asking questions about but I wasn't really sure exactly, even after getting answers. How do you decide? I mean, there was so much detail. The props are massive. The makeup.
Those people back there do all that for you. Yes.
Well, watching them, you're constructing them in the middle school, essentially, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They were constructed there, so you're finding space in hallways and wherever you can to make that happen. But how do you decide that? I mean, the scale of it just was mind-blowing, impressive.
Well, I have the great pleasure of having 16 staff people that work with all of these kids, and we sit down and we just start coming up with crazy ideas. And as you said, this year the varsity did tree frogs, and to put tree frogs in scale, we had to make our trees and our branches and everything very large. So very much to the chagrin of the parents, I come with very big pictures and ask them to hopefully go out there and make our vision come true, and they do it for their students. And but it's a lot of time outside of our rehearsals, on the phone and in meetings, trying to come up with that creative process for each individual group to try to bring our ideas or their show to life. So.
Is it the same team, or is it parents and administrators as far as making those decisions?
It's myself and so each group
Okay.
has their own
Okay.
I have 16 people who teach color guard here in the district with me, and each of them kind of has their own program that they're assigned to, and I work with all 4 of those groups to come up with the concepts and the design, the costumes and the set pieces and the music and everything. So we do everything from scratch every year. So we just ended our season and we're already in conversation and planning for next year, trying to come up with one bigger and one better that we can.
Next year.
Yeah.
At
So.
first I thought it was all insects,
Yes.
Watching the frog.
No, it's different. It's a different idea every single year, and kind of, we look at the kids and kind of what their strong suits are, and because the beauty of what I get is I get these kids in 4th grade and I get to teach them for their entire career of color guard. Where sometimes a coach might only have them for a year or 2. So I really get to know them, their personalities, and what we can use to our advantage. And this year, in particular, our tree frogs, we knew that they were quirky and very flexible and those kinds of things. So that's why we kind of went that direction. And it really set them apart at the national stage because they were very, very unique. So they got a lot of nice press at the national level because of their uniqueness.
Well, the music was very unique.
Yes.
I don't think I've ever heard
Yeah, we
Just
work with a
chirping
music,
frogs.
we work with a music designer and engineer out of Indianapolis,
Oh, wow.
Indiana. He does all of our music engineering for us.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
you.
Guys.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Sorry.
No, no, it's not your fault.
Yeah, so great.
I had a dropper, I'm so sorry.
No, thank you very much.
Should we do exactly? Couldn't do it, I'm so sorry. I didn't know Gusto was.
It's all good.
Don't let it happen again. You could have put the camera down. Really couldn't.
Good. Oh, good. We have just a transition.
Yeah, do our 2-minute relax.
Just gotta grab it, Jenny.
Go on if you want.
Yeah, I'll get you one, I got it. Are you mine? No. He's gotta get one too. Okay. Run around. Now it goes. Yeah, I do. It's one of those days.
So as we transition the group, we'll have some members from the high school, from the alternative schedule committee come forward to give an update to the board in terms of what we're doing right now with the alternative schedule. Again, tonight is meant to be more of a brief update for the board because it's a work in progress, as you'll see as we move forward. So Kelly, we're not working.
Oh, yeah, this one is. That one is? Oh, yeah, it is. Okay.
So, Dr. Wood, you want to continue?
Sure. So it's hard to say sometimes where movements begin. You don't know until you really are kind of in the thick of it. But we know that for quite a while, this has been a topic that has been tossed around. Why do we have 9 40-minute periods in the high school? Have we considered something else? And more, I would say personally that I think the tipping point is as we continue to hire great folks, many of whom have been in other places, they keep coming in and putting pressure on us. And when we ask them the question, what is the hardest transition? It is the sense of, I feel like I'm going backwards, that I used to be able to teach in a different way and more in depth. So, and while we have that perspective, we have plenty of folks saying, we've had great outcomes with this model for many years. So, if nothing else, it has risen to the point where we say, we need to consider in earnest why our high school schedule is the way our high school schedule is. And so, we started an admin team, and you see Ron and Michelle and Becky, Carmen, Michelle Mylod, Ron Agustinoni, high school principal, are some of the admin members on our committee. And we started meeting almost 2 years ago, kind of doing what would it be? How would it look? What do we know about what other districts are doing? It actually led to us a year ago, developing a little over a year ago, the profile of an engaged classroom, because we kept coming back to what's our why in this? And be it 40-minute schedule or 60-minute schedule or 80-minute schedule or any combination thereof, what's our outcome? Because you can honestly have deadly boring 80-minute classes, and you can have really stimulating 40-minute classes, and you can have the exact opposite, right? The exact opposite can hold true. So what is it that we're really looking for? Well, we settled on the fact that we were looking for what we've outlined in the profile of an engaged classroom. We also started talking about our future present concept. What is it that we want to be in 5 years? And then what are the things that we should be doing now so that we can work toward that? We also have identified that we want to ensure that whatever our schedule is, it provides the greatest opportunity for engaging in interactive classrooms. That we have student-centered learning environments, opportunities for deep, authentic learning, maximum student safety. Whatever the schedule is, we want to make sure our students have the most safe environment possible, maximizing instructional time, manageable workload prep, and I'm sorry I'm reading all of these, but these are really, I believe, the most important components of what we're looking for in a schedule. We want student wellness and a sense of whatever the schedule is that leads to the greatest amount of mental health for our students. And I will say also our teachers, because they're experiencing this schedule in a different way. But thinking about both parties, and also we have a do no harm clause. So how do we make sure that students aren't able to access fewer things, or that we don't make a schedule that's more constricted or restrictive? Then access to course materials. We want to make sure that students aren't going to be missing major things. That kind of goes along with the do no harm clause. So we started this process, and this was our original graphic. This is where we thought we were heading, and we got partway into it and had to really stop and regroup, because we realized, and you'll see, we did the profile of an engaged classroom, we started defining our intended outcomes, we did the stakeholder survey, and then as we started thinking about the design model, we kind of paused and said, have we really clearly identified our why? And who are the voices around the table right now having this conversation? And that is when our administrative committee started talking about how do we get input from focus groups, and how do we get input from teachers and parents and students, and also how do we expand our committee to have more voices. And so you'll see we have kind of a reset, and the next page kind of shows what we've really done since we were here last. And the yellow, I've talked about most of the yellow. Moving down into, we did the stakeholder survey last April, and a board presentation that just, basically the board presentation to you last year, just to jog your memory, said, when we sent out a survey, are you interested in having a conversation about possibly looking at different scheduling models? And in general, the answer was yes. We're interested in the conversation. We formed the committee this January. It actually took a few months because we were partnering with STA to make sure we had representation of teachers across the middle school and the high school on this committee. We formulated focus groups. Kelly sent out 2,000 invitations to middle school and high school parents and staff and students. We didn't have the best turnout. We had about 43 come in total out of the 2,000 invitations, but we got great feedback from those 43, and the great feedback was, I have more questions and I have opinions on this topic. And that was a really important takeaway for us, of what are the questions people are asking. We then, because we thought, I don't know if we didn't know if we hit enough people, so we did an open forum. So about 2 weeks ago, almost 2 weeks ago tonight, we sent out a massive invite to all secondary and said, we will be in High School East Library. We are happy to talk through with you any of these potential changes that we're considering come. And I don't know, maybe we had 30 or 40 come. So we certainly feel like at least we've put out and we've said, come, if you have some strong feelings and you'd like to join in on the conversation, come. So that's kind of where we are, and where we're headed is moving into putting some greater structure to the conversation around different schedules. But here is a look at the message that we shared with everybody who participated in focus groups so far. So,
much has changed over the years, from learning standards to the use of digital technology. The focus is increasingly on the need for engaging practices. Shen has implemented many changes, from the integration of emerging technologies to professional development for engaging classrooms, focusing on culturally responsive instruction and environment. So much has changed over the years, from learning standards to the use of digital technologies. The focus is increasingly on the need for engaging and dynamic classrooms with innovative instructional practices. Shen has implemented many changes, from the integration of emerging technologies to professional development for engaging classrooms to focusing on culturally responsive instruction and environments. The district is also exploring innovative classroom furniture to support student learning. While Shenendehowa is consistently focused on continuous improvement and is progressive on various fronts, the daily routine for students has remained the same. Shenendehowa's secondary schools have followed the same basic schedule for more than 60 years. Every class meets every day for approximately 40 minutes with science lab and physical education on alternating days. We routinely hear from teachers about what might be possible if they had more time with students. The district has embarked on a study of different models to determine if a different approach could improve student engagement, achievement, and 21st century learning. In the fall of 2017, a group of administrators began the process of gathering information. They began researching and studying different scheduling options, as well as visiting schools with different schedules. A survey was sent to all secondary parents, students, and staff to gauge interest in and awareness of different scheduling options. Based on the feedback provided by the 1,345 people who participated in the survey, a great many supported the idea of looking at alternative scheduling options. While there are many different scheduling models used across the country, state, and our local area, most are variations of our current schedule of 40-minute classes, a 60-minute block, or an 80-minute block. Once that was determined, a committee was formed made up of teachers and administrators to look more closely at these options. These focus groups are an effort to share some of what has been done so far and to get feedback from the people it will impact most. In 2018, the district developed the profile of an engaged classroom to identify classrooms that are most conducive to high levels of learning. Scheduling models will be evaluated using a rubric that is based on the profile of an engaged classroom. The goals of any scheduling model will be to ensure it provides engaging and interactive classrooms, student-centric learning environments, deeper learning, student safety, maximized instructional time, manageable prep workload for students, and minimizes student stress. For our purposes, we're going to share with you sample generic schedules for the current 40-minute schedule, a 60-minute block, and an 80-minute block. These are schedules that could be used for all students. We understand that there will be many different exceptions that don't fit easily into any of these schedules, but that will be up to the administration to tweak things just like they do now with the current schedule. We just want your feedback based on the overall concept. Over a 20-day period, all three models average approximately the same amount of instructional time in each class. In general, Shenendehowa's current schedule is based on a 40-minute, 9-period day. Classes meet every day for 40 minutes, with lab and physical education meeting on alternating days. Students have a full period 40-minute lunch. There are 9 transitions between classes. The 60-minute rotating block schedule is generally based on a 6-period day. Classes meet 3 out of every 4 days for approximately 60 minutes. Students have a shortened lunch period. There are 6 to 7 transitions. The 80-minute rotating block schedule is generally based on a 4-period day. Classes meet every other day for approximately 80 minutes. Students have a shortened lunch period. There are 4 to 5 transitions. Shenendehowa recently held 4 focus groups. Parents, teachers, and students were randomly selected for participation and were asked to evaluate each scheduling model using a rubric. What we discovered from the 43 participants was that they had a lot of questions about how the 3 models work. So we would like to open it up for questions, and then we will provide the link for the rubric, and you can take it home and complete it online.
So that was shared with everyone who participated in either the open forum or the focus groups that we held. And we wanted to make sure we were giving everybody kind of a kind of fair, neutral, comparable presentation. And then we followed up by answering a number of questions that came up, particularly when we passed out the schedules. So I'll let Mr. Agostinoni outline some of the things that we've talked about as a group for our next steps.
So as you can see there, next steps, we have the sample schedules, which makes a lot of sense. And it makes more sense if you've worked in those schedules, we've seen them. For those who are not involved with scheduling, it can be a little confusing and try to conceptualize it. So we're actually going to start creating those. It's called, in Infinite Campus, called in the sandbox, right? You kind of play around the sandbox. So we're going to do that with the 60 and the 80. Again, those are 60 could be 58, it could be 81, right? But that general length of time, we're going to create those in the sandbox and look at them so we can see some of the constraints that exist. And it's a hunch that some of the constraints that exist with a 9-period schedule are also going to exist with a 6-period or 4-period block. So but kind of putting that down, because it's kind of hard to get feedback and put it out to some folks for additional feedback unless you really have something for them to look at. Again, some of the people who've worked in this, they can kind of visualize that, but if you haven't, you really need to see that. So I think that's what we're moving forward with. It's kind of like we had this big 50,000-foot view, and now we're coming down to maybe 30 or 20 and trying to get out of, get into the minutia, but just get that view so people can kind of see where we're at now.
Yes, exactly. And we recently have been hearing some feedback from some teacher committee members saying, it may be a good idea to present to the faculties in each school, even though they were invited to come. And so we're now in the process of putting together some sort of presentation for the middle school and the high school faculties so that everybody can have an opportunity during the day to be part of the conversation while we're still in the early stages of the conversation.
On your wheel, you had next year's implementation, but it's really further out.
It's the
Okay.
following year, and this should have said one more year out.
And would you do it all at once, or with a focus group, what would you would do it all at once?
We say all at once.
Okay.
Maybe what?
The entire student body in
Oh,
the
yeah.
high school? Okay.
Yeah.
Because it wouldn't work otherwise.
Well, no, some schools have done it that way, but I don't know how well it is.
You've got teachers that have been teaching 5, 10, 15, 20 years with a 40-minute schedule and so forth. Now all of a sudden they're going to be 60 or 80 minutes. You've got students that still have a certain span of attention. How much training is it going to take for the teachers to be able to effectively make use of the extra time they have in those blocks?
Professional development is a major area of focus, and we need to focus on it even if we're staying in a 9-period, 40-minute block. Students should be sitting less, they should be talking more. So regardless, we are going to continue our focus on what engagement in the classroom means, what it looks like, and what it would look like in the 40, the 60, or the 80. We know from feedback from teachers who have taught in both, you don't simply put two 40s together to make an 80. There should be more opportunities for students to really roll up their sleeves and get into the content while they're there. Another benefit is that you have fewer transitions, like you're packing up and leaving less. Well, you still need to change activities pretty routinely so that students have that opportunity to apply what they've just been learning. So professional development needs to be an area of focus, particularly if we make a shift, but even if we were to stay where we were at, the focus on student intellectual engagement continues to be really important.
So, Gary, if you look back when we first shared the schematic with the board, a big part of the implementation is this. And back to your point, these are some things that, if you look on the screen here, the substantive PD, the target PD. So a lot of PD focus in order for implementation to take set. So that's why even when we may have models in place, the reality of it is we need to have people ready to implement the model. So it will take longer for initiation or takeoff, so to speak, because of all the stuff preparatory prior to that.
Does the
These
short
longer
lunch
periods,
period? Go ahead, Gary.
These longer periods of time work equally well with different ability groups.
You can find every model that we reference in play in local school districts and national school districts, and you really can't separate out results. You'll see a school district whose results mirror ours with an 80 and a 60 and a 40, and you'll see school districts with very different results from ours with an 80 and a 60 and a 40. So they're in play for all levels of students all across the nation, and so we're really stopping and thinking about what is the experience we most want our students to have here at Shen.
With the shortened lunch period, so you're moving kids from 40 to 25, is that going to be an additional strain on the lunchroom to get through all of those kids so much quicker?
That's a great question, and that question came up in the focus groups. And the best thing was having teachers of the middle school, in particular, at the focus groups, because where somebody would start going down the road saying, I don't think our kids can eat in 40 minutes, or in 25 minutes, you know, they're used to 40, and how will they get through the line? You then had 2 middle school teachers saying, have you passed by the lunchroom? The last 15 minutes are where we have the most significant amount of challenges in the lunchroom. That's where kids need to be in a different setting. They are very done with lunch, yes, so it can be done. We are also been looking at it at the high school. And
I'm just going to add, we just did drills during we just did drills during our lunch periods, and we chose the 25-minute mark because everyone is done with lunch. And when we were sitting there waiting to do the drill, we realized at about the 20-minute mark, the vast majority of our students were done. So that's why. So just having done that.
But because the question came up, we were really starting to look for that, you know, because it's a good question.
So more to come. One of the intent today was to, one, keep the board informed of the work that has already been done and the work to be done, because as you know, things have a tendency to go slow, then speed up, and then kind of slows down again. And so when we go through the speed up phase, we don't want you to hear about things that, quite frankly, you need to have a good understanding of as we move forward. So pretty exciting stuff, and it literally probably take us another 18 to 24 months before we get to the point where we're.
Is it inevitable, or is there a go, no-go?
You know, I'll be honest with you, Gary, and I'm going to say it publicly, I think it's inevitable. There's no way we can sit here and say we're going to have a different experience for our kids in 2030 with the model that we have right now. There's no way we can say it. I mean, we can paint the room a different color, but it's still the same room. And I think that's where we need to start having those conversations, and that's the reason why we've taken the time to say, let's look at what we're doing. Let's look at what we're doing very carefully. Let's look at experiences. And when you think about it, in 2006, 7, 8, we were talking about 2020, we were talking about one-to-one, and the board passed the BYOD policy to gear up for technology implementation. And the dramas that went with that, people saying, oh my God, now kids with devices, this is going to ruin the education process. And now we have thousands of devices going home with kids every day in a very seamless way, to the point where some people look back and think, haven't we always been doing this? It's a fairly new thing. So we've been doing different things, as the video pointed out, to consistently, but yet in an evolutionary way, change the culture of teaching and learning. And that's where the culture is going. When you think about Cameron with 10th grade, in 2 years when Cameron goes to college, probably most of his classes, if not all his classes, are going to be in a online platform. My kid is experiencing that right now. And so things are changing, but part of the problem that we have is that we have a tendency to be prisoners of our past assumptions and convenience. And so this is not about inconvenience, it's about growth and progress, and it's about us taking a very deliberate step to understand what it takes to have that growth and progress. And we know professional development is going to be a big part of it. However, we have more and more teachers coming into our system, coming to education, that are coming from a different learning style as students, as college students, and coming in saying, okay, this is how I was taught in college, and why am I taking a step back as a teacher in the classroom? And so as that evolves, that creates opportunity points. And so this isn't a race to change. It's a necessity for us to evolve in order to remain progressive as a system. And we want to do it, well, we never want to do it, we will do it right. Whatever that right model is and the right way to do it, and taking all those factors into consideration. And as pointed out, is people think that the model we have now is easy. The model we have now is a bear. It's a bear, and many exceptions happen all the time to fit things in, fit unique situation for kids in, and it's no different moving forward. Trying to fit unique situation for students into the equation. But change inevitable, and I say that very respectfully. It's going to be 60, 80, 49, 58. I don't know those specifics, but we have to create a different structure in order to have a much more progressive result moving forward. So pretty excited about what the next couple of few years bring. And not to prolong this, and as we kind of, you're talking about tonight, we're going to be improving bids and changing spaces. For instance, so we're going to approve bids to change the cafeteria space. We're going to approve, we've already saw the change in the library space, how has this changed the dynamics, the flow of how kids interact, how kids teach and learn now. And once we change spaces in the technology area, all those kind of type things. And so as we're doing all this, we have to also then think about how do we create different opportunities. And so all those things will come in place. So it's pretty exciting future as we look down the road.
Do we still have to operate within the constraints of so much seat time with students to get credit for courses, et cetera?
Well, so the state still has some of that with the Carnegie units and I say, to be honest with you, so yeah, the answer is yes, but is that the factor that we're concerned that's going to limit us? No. Because at the end of the day, when you really think about it right now, I'm absolutely amazed that our kids learn certain content area with the minimum amount of contact time they actually have in classes. Mm-hmm. When you really think about it, when you think about a typical 44-minute class, as one teacher pointed out, one of the things, probably you could shave off 8 minutes off that just between transition in and transitioning out, mm-hmm. So you're down to 30+ minutes. And when you think about high school kids are actually probably in class about 170 days. So when you think about the real time on task, it's not a lot of time on task, but yet the expectation is so significant for kids to learn. And that's the reason why one of the things we're trying to figure out is how do we use, be it technology, structure, pedagogical changes, so the learning experience is a deeper learning experience and not just a surface learning experience where kids take a test and they forget about it, like most of us have done and probably still do now. And so how do we get beyond that piece of it where it's real experiential based, kids really understand, why am I doing this? And here's the result of it. So pretty exciting, but sometimes excitement can be scary too. So but we'll embrace the scariness of the excitement and transition in a way that 5 years from now we'll be sitting here thinking, hey, what's the next thing we need to embrace? So thank you for your indulgence. The next piece I have on here only because it's on the action for the board to act on the BOCES budget tonight. I'm not going to do the BOCES budget presentation. Just want to point out that the information was there. I don't know, Gary, being on the BOCES board, if you want to offer any overarching comments later on the board, you ask.
All I can say is that while the administrative budget is the only segment of the budget that we're actually voting on, the rest of it is operations, and the size of that budget reflects how many services the various component districts actually take advantage of. So that changes throughout the course of the year. But the administrative budget is essentially the core administration of the entire operation. And the one thing that is unique to the BOCES structure is that all legacy costs for health insurance are borne as part of the administrative budget. It accounts for like 61% of the entire budget now, and it's not going to get smaller in the course of time. So most of the growth that you see in the administrative budget from year to year has been a reflection of the cost of health insurance. The only way that's going to come down is through negotiations and so forth, and changing plans, saying various things that every school district has had to do in order to keep their costs down. But there are 4 people being up for election. 3 of them are incumbents. The one is replacing one board member who's stepping off, and that's it. I really don't know the new fellow at all. He's from Bernat. Yeah.
So the board will be asked to vote on both administrative budget and the candidates, and one of the things about the BOCES board has been the practice I even think maybe part of their is they tried to have education law have seats by county, so we have representation, so you don't have any one county dominate the BOCES board. So they try, as you see, they have shares, so to speak, as someone come up from a particular county, try to get someone else to come on the board from that county as we move forward. So you have Albany County has 4 seats because there are more schools within Albany County in the Capital Region BOCES. Saratoga County has 1 seat, and Gary serves in that seat. Schenectady County has 3 seats, again, a reflection of the number of schools, and Schoharie County has 2 seats on the BOCES board. So that's the distribution of members on the BOCES board, and so we'll have 4 candidates, and we vote for 4. So it's a easy process for the board.
Like the old Soviet Union.
Any other questions we have on that? So the piece, last information item I have here is, and I'll try to be, I guess I'll present from this one. So we have a futures committee. We had several meetings of that committee over the course of the past year, and just to give you a flavor, it's a pretty large committee, and it's large by design. Because we wanted to make sure that we have representation from the towns, representation from the schools, and at various levels. So if you see here, you see all the towns are represented. So the Chamber of Commerce is represented, board of members were on that committee, and as well as various administrators, building level as well as district level. And again, just want to highlight this. This is the copy that I made when this was out today. So the reason why it's upside down is because I made it, and I'm proud of my creativity because it's actually easier for you to read.
That's right, you just
read
lift the
and
page,
flip it up
yes.
and just read. Just like reading it like this. You're so accustomed to doing this. I don't know who thought this was a good thing when your eye actually goes from here to here. We should actually make books that people read like this, but it's only me. So we'll start that new trend that we no longer have books that turn, books that flip. Okay. So there we are. We start a new trend here. From now on, every copy is going to be flipping over. So with that being said, I'm justifying my inept copying skills. So I just want to highlight just a few things about this report. It's a pretty extensive report that we provided. And just the purpose of it, again, is to talk about how the not only demographic shifts, but economic conditions, how those things may impact Shen's planning and future decision making. So a lot of time, and that's subsequently the reason why we brought a lot of different stakeholders into the equation to try to get some sense of both those factors as we move forward. And also then want to use that to talk about how we use that as part of our long-range planning, be it procurement of land or future construction planning. So again, this is not saying that because we did this, we're going to be doing this. This is an information source. So as we think ahead, subsequent to the Title Futures Committee, we have some information as a basis for initial thinking and or possible decision making. So those were the 2 primary pieces. So I'm just going to walk through. So when we look at the report, as I said, we looked at economic development, we looked at population for student population, where those in the board recall back in November, we had every year we do our enrollment study. So a lot of this information also came from that. We always try to time it to get some of that comprehensive information. We look at demographic makeup of the towns, of the respective towns that make up the school system, as well as the county. So we want to say where we the micro and the macro, so to speak, as we move forward, and also look in the housing development and what's the implication of those things, because that's what subsequently define us or impact us as a school system. So with all that being said, after a lot of conversations and a lot of discussion, what you have here is a report. In the back of the report, there are certain findings. I just want to walk through the findings real quick. One, we see that, as the board knows, and we've heard it a few times now, that enrollment is stable as a system, even though we've had some low years of K enrollments and birth rates. The system has been stabilized largely because of the in-migration that created stabilization overall. And that's the immigration piece is ironically the thing that we think has caused a stabilization, but it's also the thing that's a potential wild card in terms of where is that immigration going to continue, And so if immigration continued going up, and we have now a bounce back of live births, the potential there is for significant growth in the school system. So there's big question marks, but things that we have to watch and be aware of. So our trends aren't saying we're seeing, even though we see enrollment trends saying it's been a downward just by the numbers, we know the in-migration factor has been in play for a couple of years now. So a couple of years doesn't make a trend, but once you start going 3, 4, 5 years, then we start saying, okay, we start following this now. Is this going to be the trend for the foreseeable future? So that's one of the things that we found from the Capital Regional Planning Commission study, looking at the immigration piece. Another factor that we found is that the school district continues to be very attractive to new families, and some of the reasons why, the central location of it. When all you have to do is just go to Northwood. On any given morning, you see more and more people leaving here, going north, going south for work. And so and that's a big part of the sort of centralization of the school district makes it attractive. The reputation of the school district also makes it attractive. More and more we have families moving in. I was just talking to actually Mrs. Smiley made a comment just recently that because we're doing such a great job with certain special education programs, we have families moving in specifically to be a part of those programs. And so it's kind of one of those things that, you know, the good thing turned into a potential challenge as we move forward. And a third part of that attractiveness is the sizable housing stock and developed land capacity that takes place. And I'm always astonished that I see houses going to places that I didn't even realize you could put houses in. And probably the most recent one is going off Clifton Park. If you turn on Mo, you make the left on Clifton Park Center Road right across from Orangen. I see like 3 or 4 houses being stuck in a little area that I thought was a little cemetery. And now the little area behind the cemetery is being cleared out for more houses. And I'm thinking like, wow, this is pretty amazing. And then you go further down the road and you look to the left before you see all those trees being cleared out. And so the question then is how all those things, be it commercial, I think it might be commercial going down behind the Y, but all those things making it attractive for people to come, and certainly the redevelopment of some of the areas in terms of apartments or condos, or whatever you want to call them, in downtown Clifton Park is making it attractive. So the attractiveness to new families is a big factor that we have to always consider. Residential development capacity is expected to increase over the next few years. And so that's one of those kind of things we always have to be mindful of, again, as residential development capacity increase, who are the people moving in? And we've seen some converts, for example, on Bishop Ferry Road, if you follow me, that's largely populated Sasago, we see a lot of houses, a lot of big houses, but very few kids. And so we always have to think about, okay, what's the house prices, who's buying a house, and those kind of things, versus one of the other factors that coming up here next is a huge wild card, particularly in the town of Clifton Park, where we have the large Van Patten developments, houses that are 20, 30 years old, still in great shape, good price point, often 4 or 5 bedroom houses right now are being largely populated by empty nesters. So what happened to once those houses start to turn over and become attractive for young families? So that's a big piece of it, even though the town of Clifton Park has been very deliberate about trying to restrict zoning restrict development in certain areas. That turnover factor of the empty nester house is a huge issue that we have to watch. We can't measure it because we don't know when people are going to sell the houses, but we're seeing it that as people selling, empty nesters are selling, families are moving in. And so that's also part of the factor that we have to keep moving, consider as well. We know that the respective towns, particularly Clifton Park, Half Moon, and Malta, even though Malta is not a huge population center for us, have been engaged in various master plan studies to try to revitalize or create a much more of a downtown feel. That subsequently you see what's happening at Clifton Park Center. Half Moon has a pretty comprehensive plan where they're planning around where the Half Moon Town Park and that whole area, trying to create a feel of should I say, a destination point for families, and otherwise the 146 corridor going into Half Moon, that's being redeveloped significantly, and there are plans to put in some notable retail along that stretch going into the town of Half Moon. So all these studies are giving us indication that that we should anticipate growth and not the opposite. So this is not a community that's being stagnant. In fact, a very significant point, the budget that we're presenting to the voters for the first time, certainly in my 14 years being here, that we are right now at this stage of the process anticipating tax rates that are lower by each town than in the prior year. And the reason why they're lower is because the valuation of the whole school district has gone up sizably, notably. And so when you think about that, that's a true indication of growth, because that's about bricks and mortar and the valuation. And so when we see that, we're saying, okay, we're not a place that for the foreseeable future we got to worry about huge downturn. We're concerned about, it's not about is it going to grow. The question is, what's going to be the pace of the growth, and can we, in fact, stay ahead of that pace of growth as we move forward? So those are some of the pieces that come from a lot of these master plans as we move forward. A big concern with all this is infrastructure. Every person that we spoke to talks about, wow, this is great, transportation to congestion is becoming the problem. And if you don't take my word for it, just try to go from the district office, try to cross the street from the district office around 4 o'clock. It'll take you 5-6 minutes just sitting there waiting for traffic that's going up and down Route 9, which was once upon a time considered the slow route to go, and now it's, quite frankly, just as busy up north and south of 9 as it is on the thruway. So those are kind of things that we have to think about in terms of the infrastructure impact. So with all that being said, there are certain recommendations, and they're not necessarily in any particular order. It just happens to how they fall out in the report. We know that based upon some of the things that we're looking at now, we need to start looking at redistricting from a balancing, and we've had this conversation before with the board. With balancing enrollments, we did restricted now probably about 9 years ago when we went through this whole piece of it, and so it's time that we need to start planning for it. We're in fact in the process of planning for it. What I mean by redistricting is basically most of our buildings, Orangen being exceptions because Orangen is physically larger, we try to have a sweet spot of enrollment around 550 in each building. Right now we have one building that's slightly below 400, one that's slightly above 400, a couple that's at that 570 mark. And so we need to look at that and say, okay, how long before this becomes such a significant imbalance before we need to kick this into gear? We're not going to wait till it becomes a significant imbalance before we kick into gear. So we're in the process now of looking at a lot of data points, and that's probably a year out before we actually be able to execute some of those kind of things. So that's part of the issue that came into, and clearly if we do elementary redistricting, it impacts the middle schools because the feeder school system from elementary schools into the middle schools. Land purchase is something that came up quite a bit, and something that we've been talking about here as a board. Certainly the board authorized the sale of the 34 acres behind Shenandoah, and that was noted as a part of the referendum that the proceeds from that will be used to purchase future property. And I had on the board agenda about land acquisition. We have been talking to different landowners. We're not prepared at this point to make a public announcement because we don't have anything concrete to announce, but certainly to the board, there's something that we have been looking at and talking to different landowners, and it's not a secret because for the past 5-6 years easily we've been talking about land in the town of Half Moon. Why the town of Half Moon? The most significant growth is taking place in the western part of the school district, which is the town of Half Moon. So clearly we need to think about that capacity as we move forward. As we think about land, our ideal sweet spot for land purchase is 60 to 80 acres. Reason why? Because when we start thinking about what's necessary, we do this kind of 10, 20, 40 sequence for elementary schools singly. It's about 10 acres for middle school, about 20 acres for high school, about 40 acres. And so the whole notion that if we're going to look to purchase land, we need to purchase land not only for what might be what I'm calling midterm needs, the next 5 to 10 years, but also long-term needs, 10 years beyond, because land is not going to be created. Land is going to be used and consumed by other purposes. So how do we capture some developable land becomes a big part of the sequence as we move forward. So hopefully before the close of this school year, we'll have a sense of how the land purchase is going to be. There's a process we have to go through that. There's a public referendum, so we won't be a referendum in May. So it's not going to be, because in order to do that, we've had to have that decision made 4 months ago in order for it to have been on the May referendum. So at some point there will be coming back to you, and who knows, I don't want to put a timeline on it because we just having preliminary discussions right now. So that's one of the recommendations coming out of the committee, is to look at those type things as we move forward. Another recommendation coming out of the committee too is that as we look at these type things, and we do this all the time, ironically, because we have a 5-year facility studies that we go through and try to get some sense. But a lot of that facility study, though, looks at what needs to be repaired to existing buildings. And so this is slightly different to say, okay, well, we know what the repair piece is, but if we start thinking from a capacity lens, what's the best way to address capacity? So there are many ways, but probably the two most logical ways is, do we add to existing buildings, so expand existing buildings, and or do you build another structure? So part of what this recommendation is to say that let's start thinking about some process to start doing some kind of feasibility study, looking at capacity, looking at all the data points that we need to look at, and recognizing that a couple of things happen is that there are a lot of restrictions with the state aiding of new construction. It's capacity, when I say capacity, enrollments, how much new enrollment you have, how many enrollments you're going to project, and all those kind of things. The aidability of that, the tax impact of it, we have to consider. And the tax impact is not only of the construction, it's the tax impact of the operational cost of when you bring something new on board. If you add a new school, for example, that's a whole new set of staffing implications. And so how do you plan for those things well in advance, and the public being aware that if you add a new example, a new school, you're adding basically another several $5, $6, $8 million to your budget. So what's the implication for that from a tax impact, at least for those initial years before things become normalized? So those are the type things that again, looking at some study that we'll have to put some structure to in the coming months. And I say coming months, it's not going to happen in April or May. It's more so a longer term initiative to kind of put some structure in and try to figure out how to be effective to do that, and maybe actually contract with some outfit to do a pretty extensive feasibility study and looking at those type of things. So that's a big part of it. And so subsequently, the board's not being asked tonight because you're hearing this and reviewing the document, but we hope that the board will accept the recommendation, which are the commission of the study, look to the land purchase, and look at the redistricting. So we spent a lot of time, and quite frankly, you kind of came back to some of the major big rocks that we've been talking about all along. And it's good that we have a cross section of our constituents who've been part of the process and who understand the complexity of doing this. And I'll give you a quick example, not to mention who, but one of our town officials said that one of the big challenges that he faces now is that when people hear that the district is going to purchase land, they make an assumption that if we buy land tomorrow, they're going to have a new school the next year. It's not. Even if we were right now ready and already decided, it would take minimally, fast track, 5 years before you have a new facility online.
That's assuming SED.
That's what I'm saying. Minimally. And so I say that because sometimes people have these assumptions about what it takes. And the irony of it, if you even build a new house yourself, between purchasing land and all those kind of things, it's going to take you a long period of time, much less the complication that surrounds the capital project of the school. So this is the Futures Committee, and we have done this. We did this last time in 2010, 2011. We had update, and we did this prior to ShadowCon being as a part of the process for ShadowCon coming online. So we don't do it often. We try to be strategic about it. So this will give us something to chew on, if you will, for the next 3 to 4, 5 years out as we look to see where population is going, where capacity is going. But probably our more immediate action step beyond the board, hopefully at the May 7th, adopting this. And adoption is not because the board need to form adopt it. It's more symbolic, saying that the board is supportive of the steps moving forward. So there's no law says the board has to, because there's no law said that we have to have this plan. or no loss of it have is committed. This is our process, and it's the board basically saying we're endorsing the three recommendations there. But probably the more immediate step is to try to cement some type of property for purchase within hopefully the next 6 to 12 months.
That's the most, but, you know, having said that, you have to find the land, you have to find, so it's, there are a few things that we know with certainty right now, and that is the long term, we don't see growth. But the short term, the immediate now, we have schools that are over capacity, and we have schools that are significantly under capacity. We also know about how long it takes to build a building, and about how long it takes SED, maybe 18, 24 months if we're lucky for them to approve it, but then you add that to the time, I'm assuming, is it 5 to 7 years? Is that fair to say?
Between concept and construction complete of Shattercon is about 7 years.
Oh, 7 years, okay.
Between concept,
For
between people start thinking about it and the whole gyration.
So we're already past concept, so, okay. So why not, I don't understand what, well, actually, I'm just trying to understand the, why not spend time with rebalancing now? Or making the initiative to do that first?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, so you are going to, so that is the plan. Okay, in the recommendation, you were saying there's no order, but then you said there's a more immediate push.
These aren't listed in part order, it just happened to be.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Some context, the context on the, redistricting, we've always kept bringing it up.
Okay.
But every fall, we come in here and miraculously, the class sizes seem to work out. Meaning we don't have, in fact, the last time we looked at class sizes, we had no elementary school above the max line. Whereas previous years, we had a couple. So what it tells us is, because you're maybe, rebalancing within the school, maybe have an additional fourth grade and drop a second grade or something like that, the principals are kind of controlling it, but how long is that going to last? We think probably.
Well, the problem with thinking about it that way is if the school's built for 4 sections and you're squeezing 5, that means you're taking some space that probably was not intended to be a classroom, and you're turning it into a learning space.
And I would say we've pretty much done it on the backs of the full-day kindergarten classroom, because you've always been a half-day K, and those schools are operating well, no classes above the red line on max size, and that's probably the most sensitive touch point with parents. When a parent sees that their class
26, 27,
they start saying, oh, this is wrong. Yeah. Okay. And then what you also see in all those schools, you still have a dedicated art room, a dedicated music room, because we aren't having those teachers walk around with a cart. So that's kind of still working, but that's
I hear what you're saying,
yeah.
but I feel like we're discounting those who are making a greater sacrifice. Yeah. And even in Aranja, you have to have smaller classrooms for these kids, with the greatest need. Mm-hmm. And if you have a larger population, that's beyond what.
But look what they've done. I mean, we brought a whole BES program.
Look what they could do if they weren't in a crowded environment.
No, I mean, those are all the factors that, quite frankly, are happening regardless. Because it's like, it's if you have empty space, people find a way to fill it. So the question then is, how do we prioritize what's being filled with spaces? And we do have some buildings that have less flexibility than others, and some buildings have more flexibility than others. But we try to maximize the flexibility. I'll give you a perfect example. The Chisago, when we had discussions probably 2 years ago, or longer here, about initiating the MOVE program. The MOVE program was housed in Chisago. And quite frankly with you, so it's not like we have buildings with empty classrooms sitting. Spaces are being used. And I say that because it's while we can look at the numbers and say, well, yeah, we just do 550 and just, hey, you're the closest family to live here, you go there. That's one piece of it, but quite frankly with you, that's like the minor piece of the equation. It's the program implication pieces that we have to look about. So in many cases, and that's where we struggle with the state education department, because oftentimes the state education department puts, I think, more stock in the numbers than on the program piece of it. We're saying that we're adding spaces or using spaces not because we have more kids, is because we're providing different type of programming for students. And so the question then becomes, if as a system we want to say, hey, we don't want to add more spaces, then we're going to have to make some serious decision about what programs do we not continue, or say we won't add any new things. And so that is that balance between what we're saying here now is that, how do we ensure that as a school system, we try to continue to have programs that accommodate the various and changing needs of kids, and as well as a school system, how do we make sure that the numbers don't get out of hand, that it becomes whatever. And most of you probably weren't here, or probably have kids in the system, but when I got here, ironically, talking about Chisago had over 700 kids.
I remember when
in
that,
Chisago.
I was here when that happened.
And there was 700 kids for years in
Right.
Chisago.
But we don't want that.
No, that's what
We
I'm
don't
saying.
want it to be
But
too
that's,
small.
that's the reason why, and that's why these things
Equity,
are
equitable
in
for
place.
all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So again, it's great conversation, Mrs. Hoffman, because I think sometimes even from a public hearing it, people don't understand it's not a simple mathematical equation.
Oh, yeah.
It's all the things that we have to consider as we make these decisions as well.
I do think, though, that it's very forward-thinking and smart strategically to say, okay, we've got this money in the bank that we're going to purchase property. Even if we don't build the school for 10 years, buying that property now is going to be a heck of a lot cheaper if we wait 5 years, because A, it may not be around.
Even be there.
Exactly. So I think that's...
Yeah, that's
And that's a big factor.
That's a given.
Yeah,
We're seeing it right now.
Yep.
It's the squeeze right now
to get the land, to find that
what we
60,
call
80
developable
acres, yeah.
land. Developable land in this region, when you think about it, this region is very wet. System, right now the campus is on an aquifer. If you go a couple feet down, you got water problems. And so what happened is that when we look at that, so if I'm a private sector, I can buy something that's wet and put a lot of money to redirect streams and those kind of things as a part of the approval process and remedy the land, because I can then build my business around getting proceeds to offset whatever I expended. As a school, we can't say, hey, this school was cost too much to construct, and so we're going to bill the parents a little bit extra who kids are coming here, because it doesn't happen that way. So when we look at developable land, we're competing against some market space that it's an unfair competition in many degrees, because what we have are proceeds we have and or whatever tax implication there will be to go beyond whatever proceeds we have. Ideally, we want to purchase within our current means. That's the ideal. I don't know if we're going to be there or not, but that's the ideal.
So we're looking to, so we're going to prove this or the concepts at our next meeting, but we're hoping that you're actively looking at land now, and so you're hoping to bring something to the board in about a year's time.
Well, we hope to bring a recommendation
Or 2 years.
in the next
Oh, a recommendation.
2 or 3 months for land acquisition.
For land acquisition.
A recommendation, but it's a referendum that goes with that. So 2 or 3 months is
Okay.
actually more like 6 or 9 months by the time it goes through that process.
And then what's the timeline then on these other two?
I couldn't even tell you right now.
Redistricting.
Redistricted. So sorry, we won't be redistricting anything for September. So,
Oh, right.
so,
That's
so that's the only time I can give you.
Okay.
So for all the parents who are just anxious because we're having this conversation,
That'll be the next thing on the grapevine tomorrow.
Well, I came up in a PTA meeting last night, so I want to make sure I have answers. That's what I'm.
it'll be. I mean, at
I think the
earliest-
answer that you gave I think the answer that was given last night was appropriate.
Well, it was directing it to tonight too, so.
At earliest, if everything works, at earliest, we talking about 2021, 2022, and because again, looking at the experience of the last time we went through redistricting, it's a pretty intensive process for one, and it's pretty technically intensive and pretty politically intensive. And a lot of emotions that goes with it, especially when you're telling people that, we are splitting schools, we're going splitting up neighborhoods and things of that nature. As I said, I think last time we moved about 3,600 kids. A lot of kids got moved around because we were bringing Shattuck-on online, we were doing a lot of stuff, and it worked very well, and no kid was harmed. Once people got beyond the emotion of the fact that school that you went to last year, you're going to a different school next year, and you will make new friends. Once people got beyond that piece, it worked very well and has held very well for the last 6-7 years.
Yep.
Okay, so But you're talking about the time frame for putting, a new balance or a new plan into, okay. So obviously you're not going to wait till then to talk.
Oh,
and
no.
sort of- Okay. So that's really where I was coming from. So in 2 to 3 months, you bring something to the board.
Related to land.
Related to land. But the committees for these other two, the redistricting and the feasibility study for the capital projects, that's happening now.
Well, the redistricting and the feasibility study, we don't have a structure yet.
You don't have the structure yet, okay. And what's the timeline for that?
We don't have a structure yet.
Okay.
I can give you a timeline for structure I don't have.
Okay.
I know you want to have concrete answers, but I can make them up.
Well, not so much concrete. It's just, so I have, because I know you can't, you don't have enough information to make that, but just to give it a general sense as to, because it helps knowing where you think we'd be actually making the changes for redistricting, that it would impact, the first impact would possibly be not this next school year, but the school year after.
Yeah.
And then, but clearly the committees, it's going to be intense. You're going to have to form, parents and all the stakeholders are going to want to weigh in, and so that process is going to take a year.
Probably the best, because one of the things we can't do is give people certain impressions of things that we haven't even gone through the gyration of planning for. Versus, I can tell you what we won't be doing. We won't be redistricting for September of 2019.
Right, okay.
So redistricting will occur some point beyond the 2019 20 school year. As far as land purchase, if everything falls in place, some point probably in the fall, if we decide to do a special election, it'll be in the fall. If we decide to say, hey, we don't want to do a special election, it'll be next May. So it could be, if we identify property within the next couple. Reason why, because when you think about it, look, the process going backwards. If we want to do a vote some point in the future, we have to count ourselves at least 3 months backwards to get the legal pieces in, and you have to go at least 2 months beyond that just to get the negotiations of the thing. So you're talking about even 6 months before you even go out for a potential special election on something. So just give you some general time frame. And so the land piece, again, if we're fortunate what we're looking at comes in place and the price is right and all those things and the property checks out, we're talking about minimally 6 months out before a potential special referendum. By law, we have to do that. From a redistrict, from a feasibility construction piece, right now, quite frankly with you, our focus is on the projects that we have right now and getting those projects to fruition. The board tonight's going to be asked to approve the cafeteria project. Next couple of weeks, we're taking some road visits to look at the technology wing project. And so part of what we want to do is make sure that the things that we're doing well right now, we are concentrated time, because it's the same people that will be doing some of these other things. And so some point, ideally could be next spring, we'll start a group, and we have a facilities committee group that's already in place, that we'll start having conversation with that facilities committee group to say, okay, here's some things that we're looking at now. We have some land, we have some enrollment data, we have some new factors. Let's start having those conversations to say, what's this build out of a 5-year, 10-year plan that's looking from a capacity perspective versus a 5-year plan that we have looking from a facilities repair perspective. Two different things related to capital project, but two very distinct approaches as we move forward. And we do that because we have to be mindful of the fact that the burden that we place on taxpayers become essential. And so how do we balance our debt sequence with those pieces, and how do we maximize aidability from the state? So a lot of moving parts.
Okay.
One thing on the redistricting, this happened a couple of years ago. So I think it was a meeting that a principal had with some parents. Some comments were taken the wrong way that, hey, we're going to be redistricting. And within about less than a month, we had parents in front of us, saying, please don't do this. This is going to destroy my neighborhood, my kid's life. And that was just the wrong way. We sort of backed into that type of a mode.
Which is why we're having this
Right.
public.
We'd much rather be proactive
absolutely.
and say, hey, we're having this committee, we're talking about it. Gary has presented a couple times just things we've done in the past, where we actually had some employees in the district office almost dedicated to making sure it was done right. And what we're seeing now, it's still held up for us. We come in every fall and we find out that we have no parents above that max threshold. And that's something I think puts everybody at ease throughout the year, that, okay, we've kept it at that level. There's still a lot of asymmetric things within the buildings, but that's by design, so we get the most out of it. So.
A lot of good conversation, and that's what makes this fun.
Yeah.
The one thing, well, as far as the recommendations are concerned, I would like to think that we can be as forward-thinking as the people who bought this campus.
Yep.
Think about how well it has served the district.
Fortunately, it's donated land, so.
The one where all of our
We got a
buildings
nice giant
are on
parcel.
right now. Obviously, we're not talking about a piece of real estate of the magnitude of this, nor even perhaps as big as Shenandoah and so forth, but nonetheless a sizable piece of land.
I'm not against that. I think you're taking me the wrong way with that. What I'm saying is that there are other things that we could be doing to relieve the pressure, because you say, we don't have classrooms exceeding max, but if they're maxed out, they're maxed out. That's a very different learning environment. And so all I'm saying is to look at this, not wait until we have the building constructed to address
talking about
classroom.
what you're talking about.
Okay.
I'm talking about what I'm talking about.
Talking about Gary's going from a historical standpoint of what we've done and what we've created and how it.
And what I would like to do going forward. The other thing I would like to say is that I think the figures, as accurate as they are, that we work with, are kind of very conservative projections. And what we have is a continually growing housing stock. The reason why our population in school is not growing at the same rate is because the occupancy rate, the number of children per house, per household and so forth, is not as great as it was at one point in time. Should that reverse itself, and it may be cultural, it may be pretty locked in for a long period of time. On the other hand, it may simply be a reflection of a confidence based on the people's feelings about the future and the economy. We've seen some of the lowest birth rates during the Great Depression. Every time you have an economic downturn, people tend to have fewer kids. So, these things are subject to change. And if they are subject to change, all of a sudden, we could see a considerable amount of growth that isn't showing up on the paper at all. So, yeah.
Thank you.
So, more to come. Thank you.
Thank you.
Action items.
All right, let's go to action items. First one is staffing recommendations. Mrs. Bush, please come up. On the screen. Can I have a motion on this one? First, Ms. Dobbin, second, Mrs. Stevenson. Any comments, questions? If not, all in favor?
Thank you.
And let's go to the two business items, take them separately because they are fairly big. First is the BOCES vote, administrative budget, and BOCES board members. Motion from Mr. Gilbert.
I'm sorry, who was the last vote was who again? The staffing?
Yes, staffing.
Who were the two people?
It's me and Naomi.
Deanna and?
Naomi first.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Stevenson.
Sorry, good.
Business items.
That's right, Vanessa's not here.
Motion on this was Mr. Gilbert first. What?
Vanessa's not here.
Can I get a second motion? Mrs. Stevenson, any comments or questions on the BOCES vote and BOCES board members? It's a 4 out of 4, so it's pretty much an obvious. All in favor? Okay. And second item, this bid, basically it's all the summer work, so fairly sizable dollar value. Can I have a motion on the bid? Mrs. Stevenson first, Mr. Gilbert second. Any comments, questions?
It is a big taking on that's coming on, and Dr. Robinson was saying that at community conversations the other day, that when you come back in the fall, if we're on target, right? You leave in June, you come back in fall and go, wow, this is awesome. So there is roads, cafeterias, everything.
The roads will be the most interesting. I'm excited about that.
And it'll behoove
the district to have some good oversight to
Yeah.
ensure that all of our necessary timelines are met, all of the necessary
Barb is still with us.
requirements.
Yeah, we're pretty fortunate, and we have Freeman Project Management. And so again, for historical perspective, I think Augie's been with the district now probably about 16 years or so. 21.
Who's counting?
Who's counting, yeah.
Yeah, so I should have actually known that because he and I started this whole business together when I was at Burnox Festival. And yeah, think about that, was yeah, and he left me to come to a bigger district, and I came and found him here. So that's a big part of the oversight. I'm glad Mr. Gilbert brought that point up. When we have so many different contractors, and that's the reason why we have our project manager, the district's rep, someone whose only job is to take stock in the best interest of the district versus someone who get paid more by the more the project grows. And that becomes in their interest to see the project grow versus our focus is always to be on time, first and foremost with projects, because timeliness is important, to be within, ideally under budget, and quality product. And we've been pretty fortunate with that over the various projects. We always have fun. Shen is always under construction. And so this summer is going to be a lot of coordination, a lot of moving parts. Going to be a lot of communication. After tonight's approval, we'll be sitting down, Augie and Kathy and architects, laying out timelines with contractors to say how soon can we start. Ideally, the sooner we can start with certain things, the better. So don't be surprised that you'll start seeing road construction prior to school finishing, because we want to take advantage of good weather. For example, this always kills us with paving or roof work, weather factors. As soon as kids are clearing out of high school, we're going to start going into the cafeteria work. So these things won't necessarily, because we can't wait till there's no one around, because there's never time that there's no one around. It's always juggling and reorganizing between different use of facilities all the time.
Will there ever be a point during the summer where the campus is closed because of the new?
No, we can never close the campus. We always have alternative
There's
routes.
SEEK and all these other
No,
things that
this
are going
program's
on.
going to run.
They're still going to
Still
run.
here in the middle school, we just create, if we have to do, create different roadways, temporary or
okay.
otherwise. There's always going to be access to the campus. Might not be the most convenient access to the campus,
Okay.
but there always going to be access to the campus.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? If not, all in favor? Okay. Let's go on to adjournment. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Mrs. Stevenson, second Mrs. Hoffman. All in favor? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good discussion. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.